Jesus is our focus, family is our heart, and generosity is our posture. And just to say, if you weren't here last time, we didn't record it live. However, I did record a podcast afterwards. If you go onto our website and go on the Our Heart part of it, you should be able to scroll down and find the podcast, or find yourself an Apple podcast or Spotify, wherever it's on there too. But we've got 7 vision statements that go along our core values. The first one is that we will be a church for Morecambe, then multiplying beyond. We believe that God is going to plant churches and locations from Heart Church. We will be a church that loves outrageously in actions and words. We'll be a church that sees those who don't yet know God find hope, freedom, and life in Jesus. We'll be a church that is radically sacrificial in our generosity. We'll be a church in which family is cultivated and genuinely found across every generation and demographic. We'll be a church that will pioneer and partner with others to see our town, nation, and the nations transformed. And we'll be a church that is unswervingly obedient to the Bible and all Jesus calls us to be and do. So that's our vision there. And sort of last time when I was sort of thinking about what do we do with an info night, like what even is an info night, like what do you do, like you're gathering people, what do you actually start sharing? It was kind of obvious to start sharing some of the vision and the values. Now I could do that again, but I thought, well, what should we do the second time round? And as I was praying about it, I kept coming back to our first core value, which is that Jesus is our focus. And I spent a little bit of time this week and I was just writing down loads of stuff. Who is Jesus? Who is Jesus? He's the King of Kings, he's the Lord of Lords, he's God. Who is Jesus? He's the great I am, the good shepherd, he's our guide, he's our protector, he's the light, he's our hope, he's the one who brings freedom. Who is Jesus? He's the bread of life. He's our provider. He's the true vine that in him we can bear fruit and we can have life. Who is Jesus? He's the hope of the world. He's the hope for our lives. He's the hope for this town. He's the hope for this nation. Who is Jesus? He's the one who transforms. He's the one who renews. He's the one who breathes life into dry bones and they come alive. He's the only one who can truly transform Morecambe and beyond. I mean, not just a little bit transformed, like totally transformed. Who is Jesus? He's the one in whom we can truly know peace. He's the one who calmed the storm. He's the one who cleaned the leper's skin. He's the one who made the paralyzed walk. He made the blind see. He's the one who makes a way where there seems to be no way. He is God. He is Lord. He is Jesus. Who is Jesus? He's the mighty God, the everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace, the wonderful Counselor. He is true. He is the truth. Who is Jesus? Who is Jesus? He's the one in whom we can know sins forgiven, life eternal. He's the one in whom we can experience life in all its fullness, in all its abundance. Who is Jesus? He's everything. Without him, we are nothing. He's everything. He's the one who should be our focus no matter what our circumstance. He's the one who we should keep our eyes fixed upon. Who is Jesus? He's the one who the great cloud of witnesses followed. He's the one who we should fix our eyes on and run our race set before us with perseverance. Who is Jesus? He's the one who came down from his Father's throne in heaven, fully God, fully man. The Word made flesh and blood who moved into our neighborhood. Who is Jesus? He came and lived the perfect life in this messed up world and showed us what it really looks like to live life in all its fullness. And in just 3 years, he radically changed the world and continues to do so. Who is Jesus? He was tortured, beaten, executed on a cross. Who is Jesus? He died for you. He died for this whole world. So that you and I and billions of others 2,000 years later can find forgiveness, hope and freedom in him. All for love. I mean, this is love. This is Jesus. Who is Jesus? He's the one who was buried in a dark, cold, borrowed tomb. He didn't even belong to him. Who is Jesus? He's the one who, despite being executed and buried in a tomb, he didn't stay dead. Who is Jesus? He's the resurrection and the life. He didn't stay dead, but he rose back to life so we can now know life. He defeated sin. He defeated death. Who is Jesus? He's the one who's been working throughout generations and has been seeing generations transform from revival to revival, from act of obedience to act of obedience. Who is Jesus? He's the one in whom all things are known, made, and have their being. Who is Jesus? He's the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. Who is Jesus? He's the foundation of our faith. He's the one through whom lives will be transformed through Heart Church. That's who Jesus is. He's the head of the church. He's the head of this church. And he will be this church's chief influencer. Who is Jesus? He's indescribable. He's incomparable. And the last 5 minutes does not do him justice. His love, his self-sacrificial love, that is Jesus. Our Saviour, our Redeemer, our King. This is Jesus. And I've missed so much out. And that was just me just spending some time jotting down, who is Jesus, who is Jesus? And I was just getting even more excited. I was like, bringing to mind stuff which, sometimes we forget the reality of who Jesus is. And I'm just like, wow. And some of you are like, wow. This is God. This is the guy we've just been worshipping. This is Jesus. And if this doesn't get us excited, then I don't know what will get you excited, because this is the God who saved you. This is our Redeemer. This is our King. And if we can't get excited as we meet in a library, in a high school, we definitely will get excited when we're out on the streets with our friends and in our families and those who don't yet know Jesus. You might be thinking, so why is this one of your core values? Why have you sort of stated this straight out? Jesus is our focus. It's so important because we live in a world where so many things are fighting for our focus. So many things are fighting for our priorities. And if we're honest, so often we can often lose that battle. And other things start to creep in. And not that necessarily some of them are bad things. They're just not the main thing. And when we start making other things the main thing, our lives start to be calibrated right. And you may have seen this illustration before. We're going to try and do it. And I've not practiced this enough times, so we'll see how well it works. And we've gone for the cheapest way of doing it. So Brussels sprouts are in at the moment, and so are potatoes, so we'll go for it. But these jars represent our focus. They represent our lives. And so often the things that sort of start filling our lives are stuff like the worries of life. Yes, okay. Don't go all over the floor. The head teacher's watching. It's going all over the floor. Stop watching. It's massively going all over the floor. Let me just put the mic down for a second. Hopefully you'll still hear me. So the things like worries of life, and the things like wealth, and things like our reputation, things like Facebook likes and Instagram follows, and things like technology and fashion and gaming, and all different things start to take priority, start to take over our lives and start to fill our lives. And then we start from that place and we lose what our focus should be. All these things start to battle and fight and try and take our focus away. They take our time, they take our money, they take our thoughts, they take our minds. And then there's other things, which are actually good. Brussels sprouts, take them or leave them, but they're actually good things. Things actually could be like our family. Like our family, they're good, it's a good thing, and it should be a priority, but it shouldn't be the main thing. And so our family starts to take priority. And some of our relationships start to take priority. And even things like our ministry starts to take priority. And even like the gifting that God's given us start to take priority. And they're all great things. They're things that are given to us by God. And then what we often, I find, do is that then we try and put Jesus on top and we hope it all works out. We fill our lives with so many different things. And we get our priorities all messed up. And Jesus, rather than being our true peace, becomes our side piece. We sort of just try and make it all work and it doesn't quite work. We start to make decisions, oh well, maybe I won't go to church tomorrow because I've got something else and I'd rather be there. I'd rather an extra half an hour in bed. Or I won't do my quiet time, I'd rather a bit more of BBC breakfast this morning. Or I'd rather a little bit more time in bed. Or you know what, I'm not going to go straight for my Bible this morning, I'm going to go straight for Facebook. And we get sidetracked and things start to take away and our focus starts to be getting taken away from Jesus. And it's a daily decision. But you know what happens when we do things the other way around? When we put Jesus in first and we say, you know what, no matter what the world might take, Jesus is going to be number one. Jesus will be my focus. No matter what other temptations may come, I'm not going to let anything else take over. And as Jesus becomes our focus, you know what? You're actually better in your family. You're a better husband, you're a better wife, you're a better dad, you're a better uncle, you're a better whatever. And you start to say, you know what? I'm going to build my family and my life around Jesus. I'm going to build my relationships around Jesus. I'm actually going to say, you know what? My ministry, if God took away my ministry, I'd still have Jesus. But my ministry is important. I'm going to worship God and worship Jesus through my ministry. And giftings he's given me, that's good and that's great. And I'm going to worship God through it. And as we prioritize things right, and then we say, you know what? I'm not going to say that the internet's bad. And some of you probably spent far too much on Amazon Black Friday sales in the last couple of days. But, as we start to do things the other way around, and we start to say, you know what? We'll put these things first. I hope there's a Hoover somewhere. By the way, there's exactly the same amount of Brussels sprouts in there and the same amount of rice. Things suddenly take shape as they're supposed to. When Jesus is our priority, when Jesus is our focus, everything else starts to work itself out. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, it's going to be comfortable, it's going to be sort of really risk averse. But things start to line up right. Things actually happen as they're supposed to happen. We start to really live in the purpose that God's given for us. And we're going to be a church that refuses to let this happen to us. We're going to be a church that refuses to let Jesus be sort of the afterthought, but he's going to be our priority. He's going to be our focus. We're going to chase after Jesus and all that he has for us, because ultimately nothing will happen without him. If we start to get sidetracked that all that we believe that God has for us as a church is not going to happen. Earlier this year, I was at a conference at the Royal Albert Hall, a leadership conference, and it was just a phenomenal conference. And one of the speakers was a guy named Pastor Mike Todd. You may have seen him on social media, but I encourage you to check him out. And he said one sentence which spoke to me on so many different levels when he said it. And he said this: Jesus didn't fulfill his potential, he fulfilled his purpose. Now some of you are thinking, is that right? And I was like that, to be fair. And he started to explain, I started to think it through. Jesus had the potential to do whatever he wanted on the earth. He could have overthrown the Roman Empire. He could have eradicated sin instantly. He could have healed every person that came to him. He could have done whatever he wanted. He had the potential to radically change the world instantly. Now, he did radically change the world, but in that moment, he could have established his kingdom in its entirety there and then. But it wasn't the right time. That wasn't his purpose at that time. Now, we do know that Jesus is going to come back, and he will establish a new heaven and a new earth where there will be no sin and sickness and pain or disease, and it will be eradicated. And he will establish his kingdom in its fullness. But Jesus came and fulfilled his purpose. But he didn't fulfill all the potential that he could have done. I believe in this room and in those who are not yet in this room, there is awesome potential. But as Heart Church, we want to be a church that will fulfill our God-given, heaven-established purpose. Not chase after potential or copying what other people do, but live in and continually make steps of obedience following our purpose, what God has called us to do. And I believe that in itself is significant. I believe it's town transforming, nation changing, world impacting. And some of you probably think I'm crazy, but people thought Jesus was crazy. But we will only do that as Heart Church by keeping Jesus as our focus. You know, it says in Hebrews 12, verse 1 to 3, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let's get our priorities right. Let's align our priorities. Let's get rid of the sin. Let's get rid of the habits. Let's get rid of the things that are holding us back. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let's run the race. Let's run the race. Let's run our purpose, our calling that's already been marked out for us. That's already ordained for us. The heaven established, God-given purpose. How are we going to do that? We do that by fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. Jesus is our focus. And it goes on to say, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. But Jesus gave everything, absolutely everything. He endured the cross, he faced opposition, and he did so with the joy set before him. He saw that you would be sat in this room and that you were going to come and follow him. Now I can stand here and I can say, come and join the launch team, it's going to be so easy. But I'd be lying. But I can stand here and say, you know, it's going to be hard. It will require sacrifice. We'll face opposition. But I believe the purpose that God has given us, the joy that's set before us, is that if we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, we will live and we will see God's purpose for Heart Church, for Morecambe, for the locations wherever God might call us to plant in the future. We will see the purpose that God has for us individually lived out, established, realized. And it won't be easy. But you know, it's going to be an adventure. It's going to be risky. It will require your faith to actually have some action behind it. But actually, it's all about obedience to Jesus and keeping him our focus. Before anything else, it's all about Jesus. Before anything else, it's all about Jesus. In our priorities, in our time, in our schedules, in our services, in the way that we do church, it's all about Jesus. The reason it's our value is because the reality is that everything's all about Jesus. And we want to make sure we keep that a priority and never lose sight of the fact that it's all about Jesus. Let's pray. Yeah, Father, I thank you for Jesus. I thank you that he means so much to us, to me. Lord, I thank you for all that he is, all that you are, God. And I pray that we would make sure and we would refuse to let anything else become our focus, to become our priority above you. Well, I pray that even at this early stage within the life of Heart Church, that we would make a declaration, we would resolve that nothing else will take your place. And maybe, Lord, even this evening, you're challenging some of us to come back and say, God, I'm sorry for when things have taken your place. Maybe some of us this evening need to recalibrate our lives and go, God, I want you to be the focus again. I've got sidetracked, things have got in the way and slowly edged you out. But God, I want to recalibrate, I want to put my life back in balance and put you at the center. I want to make you the focus again. I want you to have your way. I want to fulfill the purpose that you have for me. I want to see your purposes. Not just my will or my potential. I want to see your purposes and your will, your kingdom come and your will done. Here on earth, here in Morecambe, as it is in heaven. Amen. We're going to go in just to a time of prayer and encourage you just to maybe break into some small groups where you are. And so there's going to be some